Come hear our conversation about our relation, love through our nation, making the world a better place.
Hi, welcome to Our Conversations, a cousins reunion that started with a conversation, and now we want to share our conversations with you.
Hi, everyone. Our topic for today is the bilingual experience. And I found that most researchers will say online that roughly 50% of the entire world speaks more than one language. I found that the US Census Bureau said that about 21% of people in the United States speak a language other than English at home. So what happens when we give our opinions and perspectives on different topics? Of course, we always respect everyone's opinions, and we hope that these conversations inspire you to have similar conversations amongst your family and group of friends. So ladies, what has your bilingual experience been like?
So I have, I speak 4 languages if you count English. So for me, it was a great experience. I like that I speak multiple languages because I'm able to help people who find it hard to communicate when they're immigrants and they come here. The way I feel that way, I guess, because when I came here, I was in a school in Central Falls, and I had a teacher who spoke Spanish. So my first language is, I'm going to say Cape Verdean Creole, because there's French Creole. And I guess, it not being an official language, it would be a dialect of Portuguese. So Creole is my first language. And I learned Spanish because that teacher helped me. She would speak Spanish to me and I understood it for whatever reason. And she would translate stuff into English. And that's how I learned how to speak English. I think if it wasn't for her, I probably would have had a harder time learning the English language. So I appreciate her for that. I only wish I remembered her name. But I do thank her. At work, I translate a lot in Portuguese, in Spanish, and it's hard sometimes. I like helping people, but sometimes it can be overwhelming because people will know that you speak that language, so they'll come in, they'll look for you. They kind of think you're their personal secretary. So while it is, a good thing, sometimes it's just overwhelming. I try to also tell people that, if you come there, you should try to bring an interpreter because they do have them now. When I first started working in the medical field, you didn't have really interpreters. Kids, your parents brought their kids, or they brought another family member who barely spoke English, and that can be dangerous. And I think, people in the medical field started realizing that you shouldn't have a 10-year-old translating for their parent, which I did a lot of. I still go with my mother to all her appointments. And I think the important thing people need to realize is that they don't, I don't hold this for older people because the English language is very hard to learn. So they say it's one of the hardest to learn. So the younger people that come here, I have a problem with them not learning to speak the English language, not because you're in America and you should speak English, because America doesn't have its own language, just for those people out there who think that. It's because it's for your safety, I would say. When you're going to the doctors, you should know what you're going for. You should know who your doctor is. And this goes for just about anyone anyway. But if you don't speak the language, it's even worse because you don't know what tests they're ordering or what they're doing to you. So I think it's important that, people learn. And it's also cool to just speak multiple languages. I think it's a great thing. So, that in being at home with someone who spoke purely Creole when she first came here, I learned that's important. So my mom did learn once we started school and we started learning how to speak English. We taught her, just for her sake, for her safety, so people didn't take advantage of her. You should definitely want to learn just for those reasons. So yeah, that's my experience so far.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate because I'm Cape Verdean too, and an immigrant. And when we first came, you just spoke Creole, Cape Verdean Creole. And I didn't even know what to expect when I went to school. I learned something happened where when I came and when school officially started, there was a few months in between. So I used to just watch TV all the time. And I picked up a lot of language just by watching television. By the time I started school, they didn't put me in a bilingual program. I was able to be in regular ed, but then they would pull me to give me the services to, I used to remember listening to recordings and having to repeat what the recording said, and they would test me. So I was conversational in American English, but then, that's part of being bilingual, because now what I learned about it when I read a little bit about it briefly is that you have to disengage from your original language to engage with the word that the researcher used was activate. So you have to deactivate one language to activate another, but at the same time, you're going in between two different languages in your mind. And they went as far as to say that even your mannerisms and your behavior changes depending on which language that you speak. So here I was conversational in English, but it took a long time for me to really get, okay, what's the right word to use in this scenario, or what's expected of how I need to articulate myself in this scenario. And I do definitely experience the switch. We predominantly in my home, we speak English. I work, in an environment where the dominant language is American English. But then, like, if my mother comes to visit, it's all Creole, and it's a whole different demeanor. I find myself having to figure out what words to use. So of course, there's the advantage of being bilingual or multilingual is that right now, our world is multicultural and multilingual. And people who are like biased, I learned about there's linguistic bias, right? Where people are very against different ethnic groups speaking different languages, specifically more like by immigrants, and just that push for diversity, equality, and inclusion. So the advantage is that now we have an advantage in the sense that we're more employed, we're better, we're more, I think we have more opportunity for employment. I would say it definitely helps with just overall being sensitive to other cultures and being relatable to other people in your community. Go ahead, Vonda.
I was gonna say when you said that about being biased, I think a lot of that has to do with people thinking that you're speaking badly about them. If they're in the room and you're sitting there speaking, like say the two of us are having a conversation and there's someone, whether, I don't know, it could be an American person or a Spanish person or whatever, maybe not so much Spanish, because like you said, we're more apt to understand why they're speaking that language. We don't necessarily think they're speaking about us or in a good or bad way, let's say, but they just feel that they don't understand. So they automatically, I think people think you're speaking badly about them, and people get, they feel a certain type of way about it, where I'm here to tell you guys that's not even remotely close. Not everything's always about you, or, because that's how we think. Everything's always about us. So we automatically think, oh, they're talking about me or whatever. Even in the English language, like, I'm sure you've come across it where, people are having a conversation in English, and the third person over there is just like, if you're whispering, they think you're talking about them. Not necessarily so. So it's like that with, people who speak different languages. We're not talking about you. We're just speaking because it's our natural language, and it makes us feel better. You're more comfortable with it. And that I find a lot with older people, like my mother's age or your mother.
Yeah, let me just add really quick that what I also had to pretty much accept is that American English, or the English language, is the dominant language. So as far as like science, politics, like using the word usage, like it's the dominant language. So I think that something that I'm sure we can all relate to is if you travel to other countries, they speak English, right? They might not be as aware or familiar with the culture, American culture, but they speak English. So I think it's very interesting that here the dominant culture or the dominant language is English, and then there's this idea that because they're dominant, that's the language that everybody should use. But it is a form of discrimination, right? Because now that's the only language you can use, which means those are the only words, the only ways that you can express yourself, where when you're coming from a different culture, sometimes you use different words to articulate yourself or to get your message across. So I just want to say that it's that I think when you are not bilingual, you're thinking of it as, oh, the dominant language is English. And so that's what, like you said, you're thinking people are talking about you, or you're offended by being in a room where people are speaking different languages, but it's actually an advantage to be in a diverse setting and being able to I think appreciate, whether it be Creole, Portuguese, Spanish, there's Cantonese, I mean, Japanese, think of the Ukrainians coming, there's a lot of different ways that we can appreciate language. Yes.
Near your grandmother's house, right? I don't know if you guys have gone there. My mother took me to this fish place, this little market.
Yes. My mother goes there all the time.
They're Chinese, and then they speak Creole. I thought it was the greatest thing. And automatically I was like, I want to learn how to speak her language. Just because I'm like, if she can learn how to speak Creole, I can learn how to speak Chinese. It kind of gave me like a little boost to want to speak that. It was great.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, my experience was a little bit different from the two of you. So I was born here. Both my parents were born in Cape Verde, and as you know, but fortunately, I was kind of like learning both languages at the same time, because my earlier years had, and I think a lot of us experienced this, you had multiple generations living in the same home, or like a floor above or beneath each other. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household with my grandmother and my great grandmother, who only spoke Creole. And at the same time, I had my younger aunts and uncles and cousins who were speaking Creole, but also speaking English. And then I was like the newer generation. And so having those multiple generations in the home really became such a huge benefit for me, because I know that like as the years went on, there are certain cousins who don't necessarily converse in Creole, and it could be because they weren't living so closely to the older generation. So you had no choice but to learn the language to speak with the older people in your families, and that's just such a blessing. I always, it always feels, it's so strange, right? Because I was born here, but when I can speak to my grandparents today, it feels like home.
Hmm.
Even though, because like Eliana, I work in a school. I'm literally an English teacher. So that's my world. And that's, most of our conversations throughout the day are happening in English. So, and my husband's family speaks Spanish. And so like we're still mostly conversing in English in my house, but it's like we do want to encourage our sons to eventually learn 3 languages. I'll be the first to admit we're not doing the greatest job with like making sure that that's happening. And I think part of it too is like their grandparents, a lot of their grandparents speak English, and so we fall to that.
Yeah.
So we do need to do a better job with that. I do appreciate being able to work in a pretty diverse school setting where we have a lot of Spanish speaking families, and I try my best, but I always start off super apologetic to the parents. We have parent teacher conferences, and like I'll say, I'm so sorry, my Spanish is really broken, but I'm gonna try my best, but like correct me. And they're like, no, 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 you're good. I think they're being nice, but
No, you would be
but
surprised. Um,
I
I,
try my best.
I want to tell you, Crystal, that your students one day are going to be like me. They may not remember your name, but they are going to remember you, and they're going to be happy that you were there to help them. So good for you.
I try. I know that it's really broken, and I have a student right now who primarily speaks Spanish, and I have him sitting with another student who speaks English and Spanish, and she helps me with him a lot. But I try my best. I'll come down and I'll try to explain what I'm looking what I'm trying to ask him to do for that particular day. And we get through. It's a little tricky, but I still appreciate being able to it puts me in outside of my comfort zone. When I have to talk to parents who come from Spanish speaking countries or students who only speak Spanish, I encounter that a lot. So it can be uncomfortable, but it makes me feel good in the sense that it's making me try to communicate in a new way. Um, and so, I mean, it's great. What I've seen happening, and I don't think every state does this, but I know Rhode Island, in the last couple of years, is actually um, participating in the biliteracy seal. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's become part of the graduation. Like it can be part of the graduation diploma. You have to take a series of tests to show that you can master proficiency in both English and another language, uh, in reading and writing, and I believe possibly math and sciences too. And so if you can do all that, you take a test and everything, and then you get a biliteracy seal on your diploma.
Cool. That's
Really
awesome.
nice.
Yeah, Rhode Island does it, California does it, and I'm sure some other states. So like we have some the same way that you can get National Honor Society, you get certain seals or accords for graduation. Now you can get a biliteracy seal, and it's like how marketable is that, not only for college but later on, if you apply for jobs. So I see a lot of benefits with it.
Yeah, and it could be international. So jobs in a different country, being able to transition in that way. I also thought when you were speaking, Crystal, about how welcoming that is for your students to feel, that they're welcomed,
Yeah.
in this society, in this country. And so basically, sometimes I think we forget that America was built with immigrants, and when they came, they decided that their children needed to speak English, right? Because they were coming here for opportunities, and so the dominant language ended up being English, and a lot of their native language got lost. But it's turning back into this society where we can appreciate both languages, and appreciate that people speak more than just one language instead of just, I remember some parents telling me, oh, I wish I had taught American born Cape Verdean people that I've met will say, I wish my parents had taught me how to speak Creole. They would speak Creole with each other, right? To tell on us or to talk about whatever was going on, right? But then they never taught us. So it's interesting how
one of those kids, she gets mad at me because I try to teach my grandson, and I didn't teach her, and I don't really know why, because I should have. Like, my nephew grew up with his grandmother who speaks Spanish. He doesn't, I think he can speak it. I don't really hear him speak it, but he understands it. And my daughter and him can understand some Creole, but I really wish I did teach her. I do regret that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it made me think. I was really surprised about the 21% of U.S. citizens. I thought the number was higher. I don't know why I thought that, but I was really surprised to think like that only 20% of U.S. citizens speak more than or a language other than English. I thought that the percentage was higher, but then I looked back again and it was like actually like 50% is worldwide. But it kind of goes back to that idea of like, and again, this comes from the English teacher, loves the English language, right? But it comes from the idea of like, well, somewhere along the line, someone decided we're going to call this the dominant language in this country. And so I found that it seems like besides the language requirements you might have when you're in high school or to graduate and get your diploma, most US citizens don't go on to further their language experience post high school. And so I think that contributes to that low percentage. I honestly was shocked by that. And I honestly thought that the number was higher, but I guess it comes down to the whole thing with privilege, the concept of like, this is the dominant language, this is what you're expected to speak. I can't get over the fact, thinking about what you said earlier, Eliana, as far as people who leave the United States and travel somewhere else, and they're just like, they're met with people who, even if it's broken English, like they're met with people who are trying to accommodate them by speaking the English language. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't bother to learn another language, because they're like, oh, well, wherever I go, like it'll be fine. Like they'll accommodate me. And I think that, and we're benefit from that. Like we benefit from that when we travel other places too. So like, yay for us. But if we went somewhere else and people were like, you need to know the language here or else you're gonna struggle, like we might need to experience that, because it doesn't sit well with me to be thinking about like everyone else just has to accommodate to us, when most American citizens, but based on those numbers, if you go travel somewhere else and they don't accommodate you, you're lost.
Yeah. Well, so the reason I think too, Crystal, that number is so low, I was speaking to someone today who told me, I was trying to get like a sense of why some people didn't teach their kids their language, right? So she told me when she came here, she hated to speak Portuguese because she got bullied, she got made fun of, because you have an accent. And she said that, you didn't want people to know that you were an immigrant, that you came from another place, because you were looked down upon. So your parents either if they learned English, then you definitely never learned how to speak that language. And if you did, and your parents just spoke it at home, and they told you not to speak it when you went to school or when you were out, unless you were translating for them when you went to the doctors, then that was different.
Yeah.
But kind of like that. But this has been great, guys. I really like this. I enjoy speaking all the languages that I know, and I plan on learning more. I want to learn French next, and hopefully Chinese. So there's that. You guys, thank you very much, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our page.
Click, 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 click.
Yes, thank you, cousin, for joining us to have this conversation about our bilingual experiences. And thank you for joining us. We hope you have these conversations amongst your own group of family and friends. And so, until next time,
I'm Eliana.
I'm Vonda.
I'm Crystal, and this is our
Conversations.
Bye.
Bye.
Love through our nation, making the world a better